She slid the keys across the hood of a Lamborghini Urus and said, "If you fix it, it's yours." The man standing across from her had grease under his fingernails, a 7-year-old daughter waiting in the truck behind him, and exactly $40 in his wallet. He looked at the keys. He looked at the Porsche sitting dead in the bay behind her. He looked back at her. "What's the catch?" he said. She smiled the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. 17 mechanics couldn't fix it. 6 of them are Ferrari and Porsche certified. 2 flew in from out of state. If you can't fix it in 5 minutes, you work my entire fleet, oil changes, tire rotations, the works for free, for a year. He picked up the keys to the Lamborghini, turned them over in his hand once, set them back down on the hood. "I won't need 5 minutes," he said. His name was Daniel Cruz. He was 36 years old. He drove a 2006 Tacoma with a dent in the rear quarter panel and a stuffed elephant named Gerald strapped to the passenger headrest because his daughter, Maya, had put it there 2 years ago and he hadn't had the heart to move it. 3 minutes and 14 seconds later, the Porsche started. This is that story. And if you are brand new to this channel, welcome to Dadverse Stories. We tell stories about fathers who walk into rooms they weren't invited into and leave having changed everything. Subscribe right now, hit the like button, and do not move, because this story has a twist that comes out of nowhere and hits like a freight train. Daniel Cruz grew up in Memphis in a neighborhood where ambition was treated with suspicion. His mother, Gloria, worked the front desk at a hotel for 31 years. His father left when Daniel was 4, and Gloria never once spoke about him with bitterness, only silence, which Daniel eventually understood was its own kind of answer. There was a man named Earl 2 houses down who ran an informal repair shop out of his driveway. Earl was 60 years old and built like a refrigerator and had hands so calloused they looked like leather-work gloves. He let Daniel hang around from the time he was 8, didn't make him do anything, didn't lecture him, just let him watch and handed him things when he needed them and occasionally said something worth writing down. One afternoon when Daniel was 11, Earl had spent 2 hours on a stalled Pontiac and couldn't find the fault. He stood up, put his hands on his hips, and looked at Daniel. "What do you think?" Earl said. Daniel had been watching from a milk crate. He pointed at the distributor cap. "There's a hairline crack in it, driver's side. You can only see it when the light hits it right." Earl looked. He found it. He looked back at Daniel for a long time. "Boy," Earl said, "you've got the eye." The eye, Daniel had been chasing what that meant his entire career. 17 years of shops, imports, exotics, performance builds, track cars. He'd worked on Porsches for a decade, 911s, Cayennes, Panameras, GT3s. He knew their electrical architecture the way most people knew their own handwriting. He got his Porsche certification at 28. He was one of the best independent Porsche technicians in the Dallas metro by the time he was 32. Then his wife, Simone, told him she was leaving. No anger, no crisis, just a conversation at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning that rearranged every wall in the house. She loved him. She wasn't in love with him. She was leaving Dallas. She was not taking Maya. Daniel became a single father on a Sunday in November, and by Monday morning, he was packing Maya's school lunch with the wrong ratio of peanut butter to jelly, which Maya informed him very seriously was too much peanut butter, Daddy, way too much. And he stood at the kitchen counter at 6:45 in the morning and laughed until his eyes watered, because it was either that or the other thing. He had been figuring it out one day at a time ever since. The call came on a Thursday morning while Daniel was driving Maya to school. His phone rang through the truck speakers, and Maya turned down the cartoon she was watching on the tablet and said, with great authority, "Answer it, Daddy, it might be important." The voice on the other end was crisp, female, and accustomed to not repeating itself. "Is this Daniel Cruz, the mobile Porsche technician?" "It is," he said. "My name is Victoria Hale. I'm the founder and CEO of Hale Capital Management. I was given your number by a colleague. I have a Porsche 911 GT3 RS that hasn't started in 3 weeks. I've had 17 technicians look at it. None of them have fixed it. I'd like you to come take a look." Daniel merged onto the school drop-off lane. What diagnostics have been run? Every one that exists, she said flatly. Any codes stored? None. He was quiet for a moment. Maya was watching him with the focused attention of a child who has decided this conversation is more interesting than cartoons. I can be there Saturday morning, he said. I need someone today. I have my daughter until 3. I can be there at 3:30. A pause, the kind of pause that usually means no. Then, fine, 3:30, I'll send you the address. He hung up. Maya looked at him and said, Are we going to fix a Porsche? I'm going to fix a Porsche. Can Gerald come? He looked at the stuffed elephant strapped to the headrest. Gerald lives in the truck, so yes. Maya considered this satisfactory and turned her cartoons back on. Subscribe if you haven't yet, right now, because what happens when Daniel walks into that garage the moment before he even opens his toolbox is something I have never told in any story on this channel. Comment below and tell me, have you ever been tested in a way that felt designed for you to fail? Keep watching. The address Victoria sent was in Highland Park. The house sat behind a gate and a long driveway lined with mature oak trees, and the garage, when Patricia, Victoria's estate manager, led Daniel through it, contained 7 cars arranged with the precision of a museum installation. A McLaren, 2 classic Porsches behind glass, a blacked-out Range Rover, a vintage Mercedes 450 SL. And at the far end, a Lamborghini Urus in Grigio links that caught the light like something alive. In the center bay, roped off with actual velvet rope like an exhibit, was the 911 GT3 RS, chalk white, Weissach package, the kind of car that makes other car people go quiet when they see it. Daniel stood in the garage doorway and took it in. He didn't say anything. He was counting, cataloging, reading the room before he read the car. Victoria Hale appeared from the far end of the garage. She was 44 years old, sharp-featured, dressed like someone who had a meeting in an hour. She walked like every step had a purpose. She looked at Daniel's Tacoma in the driveway. She looked at the stuffed elephant visible through the windshield. Her expression didn't change. Mr. Cruz, she said. Ms. Hale, he said. They shook hands. I should tell you up front, she said, I don't have a great deal of optimism about this appointment. The last technician who came was a master-certified Porsche specialist who works with the factory race team. He was here for 4 hours. What did he conclude? That the car needs to go to Germany. Daniel looked at the GT3 RS. What's your timeline? I'd like it fixed today. And if I can't fix it today? She tilted her head slightly. Then I'd like to make this more interesting. She walked to the Lamborghini and picked up a set of keys from the hood. She walked back to Daniel and held them out between 2 fingers. If you fix the Porsche today here without having it towed anywhere, the Urus is yours. Daniel looked at the keys. He looked at the Lamborghini. He looked back at her. And if I can't fix it? You work my fleet for free for 12 months. Oil changes, service intervals, whatever I need. I have 7 cars. He knew what that would cost him. Hundreds of hours, thousands in parts he'd have to absorb. It would bury him. He looked at the GT3 RS again. Give me your terms in writing and I'll shake on it, he said. Something moved in her face, not surprise exactly, but a recalibration. She hadn't expected that. She was used to people either flinching or bluffing. He'd done neither. Patricia will print it, she said. 5 minutes later, Daniel signed a 1-page agreement. Victoria signed below him. Patricia witnessed it. Daniel picked up his toolbox. He walked to the GT3 RS. He crouched in front of it and looked at it for a long moment, not at anything specific, just looking, the way Earl had taught him without ever using the word taught, reading the car, letting it tell him something before he imposed anything on it. Then he stood up. He walked around to the passenger side. He opened the door. He got in and sat in the passenger seat. Victoria frowned. The ignition is on the driver's. I know where the ignition is, Daniel said. He sat in the passenger seat with his hands in his lap. He looked at the footwell. He looked at the center console. He leaned forward and looked under the dash on the passenger side. He reached into his toolbox and took out a flashlight. He shone it into the lower passenger dash. He was still for about 20 seconds. Then he exhaled through his nose slowly, like someone who has just confirmed something they suspected and isn't entirely sure how to feel about it. He reached up under the dash with his right hand. His arm disappeared past the elbow. There was a soft sound, not mechanical, more like the sound of something settling. He withdrew his arm. In his hand was a small rectangular module, no bigger than a deck of cards. One of its connector pins had separated from the housing, not fully, just enough to break contact intermittently. It was the auxiliary security bypass relay. On a 911 GT3 RS, it sits behind the passenger kick panel, and when it loses contact, the car enters a security lockout that produces no codes, triggers no warnings, and looks to every diagnostic tool in existence like the car is simply choosing not to start. It is not in the standard inspection path. It is, in fact, barely in any inspection path. It appears in a single paragraph in a technical service document Porsche issued in 2020 that most technicians outside the factory have never seen. Daniel had read it at 2 in the morning in January of that year because he couldn't sleep and was working through every Porsche technical bulletin published in the previous 5 years. He had thought at the time, I hope I never need this. And then he'd filed it somewhere in the back of his mind the way he filed everything, not gone, just waiting. He reseated the connector pin. He pressed it home until he heard it click. He got out of the passenger seat. He walked around to the driver's side. He lowered himself in, pressed the brake, and pushed the start button. The GT3 RS fired up. That sound, if you have ever heard a naturally aspirated Porsche flat six at full voice, you know there is nothing else like it in the world. It is mechanical and precise and absolutely alive. It filled the garage like something being unleashed, and for a moment, nobody in that building said a single word. Victoria Hale stood 6 feet from the driver's door with her arms at her sides. Her face was doing something it clearly didn't do very often. It was doing nothing, just blank, processing. Daniel let the engine run for 30 seconds. Then he shut it off, got out, and closed the door with the soft, precise click of a car that costs more than most houses. He looked at his watch. 3 minutes and 14 seconds, he said. Patricia put her hand over her mouth. Victoria looked at him for a long time. Then she looked at the Lamborghini keys still sitting on the hood of the Urus where Daniel had left them. Her jaw tightened slightly. How, she said, not a question, more like a word she needed to say out loud. Auxiliary security bypass relay, Daniel said. Connector pins separated from the housing. It's behind the passenger kick panel. Porsche issued a technical bulletin about it in 2020. Most technicians don't know it exists. And you knew. I read every bulletin they issue. At what, 3 in the morning? He almost smiled. About 2. She was quiet again. Then she walked to the Lamborghini, picked up the keys from the hood, and walked back to him. She held them out. He looked at them. Ms. Hale, he said carefully, I appreciate the offer, but I can't take your car. She blinked. We have a signed agreement. We do, and you can hold me to it, but a Lamborghini Urus isn't something I need. My truck runs fine. He paused. Mostly. She stared at him. You just won a $400,000 vehicle. I know. And you're turning it down. I'm turning it down. I need you to comment right now. What would you have done? Would you have taken the Lamborghini? Drop it below. I am reading every single response. And if you are not subscribed, fix that right now, because this story is not over and the next 30 seconds are the ones that matter most. Victoria Hale looked at Daniel Cruz for a long moment. Something in her face shifted, not softened exactly, but moved, like furniture being rearranged. Then what do you want? She said. Daniel thought about it. He thought about Maya, who had spent the afternoon at a neighbor's house waiting for him. He thought about the school trip to Washington, D.C. in the spring that he'd been quietly trying to find money for. He thought about the small shop space he'd been pricing for 6 months. A real space, not a driveway, not a parking lot, not the back of a truck, somewhere he could build something that would last. He looked at Victoria. My standard diagnostic rate is $300 for the first hour. She waited. But if you want to do something with the rest, he said, I know a kids program at a vocational school in South Dallas that teaches automotive repair to teenagers who don't have other options. They need equipment, lifts, diagnostic tools, the basics. About $30,000 would set them up properly. The garage was very quiet. Victoria looked at him for so long that Daniel started to wonder if he'd miscalculated the room. Then she turned to Patricia and said, Get me the name of the program and the contact. Patricia was already writing. Victoria looked back at Daniel. Your invoice, she said, will be paid this afternoon, and I'll match whatever amount I donate to the program with an equal donation in your name. She paused. That's not negotiable. He drove home with Gerald staring at him from the passenger headrest and $60,000 committed to a vocational program that would put tools in the hands of kids who looked like he had looked at 11 years old, sitting on a milk crate in Earl's driveway, pointing at a hairline crack in a distributor cap. Maya was at the kitchen table when he walked in, drawing something elaborate on a piece of paper with the focused ferocity of a child in the middle of important work. She looked up. Did you fix it? She asked. Fixed it, he said. How long did it take? He sat down across from her. 3 minutes. She put her crayon down. She looked at him with the absolute seriousness of a 7-year-old delivering a verdict. Daddy, she said, you're really good at your job. He looked at his daughter. At the drawing in front of her, he could see now that it was a car, a boxy red shape with 4 wheels and 2 stick figures inside. A big one driving, a small one in the passenger seat. What are you drawing? He said. Us, she said. She picked her crayon back up. I put Gerald in the back. He laughed. He put his hand over hers on the table. He sat there for a minute just being in that kitchen, in that moment, in that ordinary, extraordinary life that looked nothing like what he'd planned and everything like what mattered. There are rooms designed to make you feel small. High ceilings, marble floors, cars that cost more than neighborhoods, all of it arranged, consciously or not, to remind you of the distance between where you are and where you're standing. Daniel Cruz walked into one of those rooms and felt none of it, not because he wasn't aware of the distance, but because he'd spent 17 years learning something that money genuinely cannot purchase, the kind of knowledge that lives in your hands and your memory, and the 2 in the morning hours when everyone else is asleep. Earl gave him the eye, Gloria gave him the spine to use it, Maya gave him the reason to show up every single day. 17 mechanics couldn't fix the car. One father fixed it in 3 minutes, and when they handed him a $400,000 reward, he turned it into $30,000 of opportunity for kids on a milk crate in someone else's driveway, waiting for someone to hand them a wrench. Some men walk into rooms and take everything they can carry. Daniel Cruz walked in, fixed what was broken, and left the place better than he found it. That's the whole story. If this moved you, if you felt something watching Daniel turn down that Lamborghini and you know exactly why he did it, then this channel was built for you. Subscribe to Dadverse Stories right now. Every week we bring you a story about a father who refuses to be defined by what he doesn't have. Like this video, it takes 1 second and it puts this story in front of someone who needs it today. Share it. Send it to the father in your life who is grinding right now and needs to be reminded that the work is worth it. And leave a comment. Tell me, what did Daniel do that you'll remember? What part of this story hit different? I want to hear from you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. The next story is already waiting. Don't go anywhere.